I know, me too. It's way better.
So much better.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the pod. I'm here with Steven and Sean from Follow Me Dark. And if you haven't checked out their band, please do. They are, how do you guys describe your music? It's kind of a mix of a lot of different stuff, huh?
Yeah. Shall I try to tackle
Go
that
for
one?
it, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to pin it down. It's definitely some rock, some metal elements. It's metal-ish. Metal-ish. It's not full-on metal. But there's some heavier parts. There's some melodic parts. There's some emotional parts.
It's definitely emotional. There's a lot of softer parts, more textural parts. I mean, it's definitely got some post-rock elements too, where
It's very like a journey. It's kind of a journey.
Yeah.
I like bands that, they don't have to. You guys have some songs that are shorter and a little bit more like melody driven. Some that are a little bit more longer and exploratory. A little bit of everything.
Yeah. And we talk. I mean, within the band. I mean, we're a rock band, so.
Yeah.
So one thing that we're always talking about is, being a rock band in the year 2021.
Yeah, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean it's almost like we're kind of taking up an old, almost obsolete art form at this point.
Yeah.
And trying to still push it into new directions is very challenging.
Definitely.
But also just playing in a band, you kind of get re-energized about how exciting the music is at its fundamental level, like loud guitars, loud drums, and, that kind of cathartic screaming. And all that.
Like you said, definitely a rock band.
Right.
Definitely.
Word.
Yeah.
Well, we wanted to talk about like a lot of different stuff today: politics, music, culture. I mean, we can really go
All
anywhere,
over the place. Yeah.
all over the
NBA
place.
trade deadline.
It's coming up.
Who are the Kings gonna pay way too much money for this year?
Yeah, right.
I heard Bagley's trying to leave, man.
I hope he leaves. I put messages on his Instagram when he's making rap and he's making music. I'm like, you're not a fucking rapper, dude.
Are you stalking Marvin Bagley?
I follow him. I mean, I just talk a little bit.
I follow.
See, here's the thing with like NBA guys, right? I'm 29, so they're all younger than me. So
That's
I feel
fair.
like I can offer them a little wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
Not wisdom, but like a little bit. Like I think the shit talking is deserved sometimes.
Perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, quit making rap and start making. We haven't made the playoffs in 20 years. Like get to it.
Make
like,
buckets.
Yeah, make buckets, bro.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Shit. Yeah. So, kind of, what's on your mind, you guys? Like, why did you want to have this conversation?
Yeah, it's been
in the first place, and
it's been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for, I don't know, a month and a half or so, 2 months maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we did it in person.
it's nice.
Definitely.
First technically in person pod.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to our home.
Yeah. Dig it,
This
man.
is the Dark Mansion.
But I love it.
It's been nice for us in the band to also live together, and so like throughout the whole COVID thing to be able to
That's the best.
stay in the same room and stay making music, and
Yeah.
that's been really we finished our album during the quarantine.
Yeah, we never stopped.
Yeah,
Just
good.
kept going.
It's
Yeah.
been lucky for us, but
Keep
it's also
your head down. Focus on what's important.
Yeah.
Definitely.
but it's we sympathize with all the people who their lives have been totally disrupted by this and by not being able to be in the physical room with their bandmates or with their collaborating anybody
Totally.
whatever.
We have an advantage in that aspect.
That's true.
I guess.
I love when I was playing. Well, when Tree Village was around and like I was playing more music, living with your band guy. At least it was always like at least 3 of 4 of us were living together,
Yeah.
It's fun.
and it was awesome because in that you can just take advantage of like it could be like 9 o'clock at night or whatever, and we're just like let's just
Somebody
like
just
bust
has
some
a riff.
and it's cool. So it's like you're always working,
Right.
and it. In a perfect world, you've got some sort of system where it's like all of that isn't going to waste. Because a lot of times we would just get drunk or stoned and we'd work on something cool and we'd forget to record it.
Yeah.
We'd
gotten pretty good at
eventually put up a big whiteboard and we're like,
Yeah, we got our whiteboard right there.
That's what you gotta do. That's what you gotta do.
Yeah, no, you do have to document, and the nice thing is we've got 3 out of the 4 of us are songwriters and generating musical material, and I would say Jim, our drummer, is a songwriter as well. He's just not like bringing us like here's a riff.
Yeah, it's good. You kind of need a mix of, both. I think. It's like if you have everyone.
Yeah,
Like,
well, it's a matter of like finding that collaborative space where it's a give and take, and you're listening, and you're also offering, and respecting. What's
Well, when
going on.
if someone comes to practice and is like, hey, I've got a full song and plays it for the band, and it like fits your sound, or it like doesn't fit your whatever that may mean, but like it's a place where you can work together to, I mean, that's great. Because
Right.
to me, I've always been like, well, that's awesome because, you know, we need new songs and it's one less song I have to write.
Yeah,
You know, in a way.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, for me, it's a godsend.
Yeah.
It's great because my last project in Chicago was more or less like a solo project in terms of the songwriting and the material.
It's all on your shoulders, huh?
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you know, and like that's what I'm doing right now, and it's like I like the fact that I can play whatever I want,
Mhm.
and I can like I have veto.
It's a give
It
and
is
take,
freedom.
though, right?
But I need
Yeah.
that other I
Yeah.
need the insight and input, and you know, I'll play a part the way I'll play a part, and you know, someone will come in and you know, they'll play something that I hadn't even thought of that sounds even better. So
That's how we wrote an album, right
Yeah.
there. We just having little parts, and then someone else has a little thing, and
yeah,
smashing
Mhm.
things together, and
Mhm.
that's,
piece
that's the
by
best
piece.
way. Yeah.
So what do you guys think like shows will be like when COVID? You think that
They're gonna be crazy. It's gonna be.
you think it's gonna be
insane.
crazy?
There's a lot of
Yeah.
pent up energy out
Yeah.
there. So I
Pent up
think,
sexual energy too. People are
oh
gonna be
my god,
It's gonna
fucking in the bathroom.
Lots of
It's gonna be
drinking.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, loud music.
think-
yeah,
you know, I think the
it's gonna
question,
get out of control.
the question we're gonna see is like, is it gonna be? Is this like a new normal where there's gonna be a new wave every few months, even with the people getting vaccines and people
Yeah,
getting
what I've heard.
antibodies
it's
and
gonna be like up and down still. Yeah.
like, you know, that we could be dealing with, you know, smaller capacities and distancing and drive-in events. You know, that could be the new normal for at least a little while.
Gotta
And
do
Yeah.
more outdoor events though.
outdoor events.
Yeah, outdoor events is cool. I mean, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
And
Especially with summer coming up right now, I feel like a lot of people
Festivals.
are itching for that. Yeah, and there's a proper way to do that, I'm sure, outdoors.
Well, maybe some people will always want to wear masks and will want to, like, you know, enforce their own distancing
Totally.
where they can, where it's like, okay, I'm going to hang to the back, or I'm
Yeah.
going to kind of be in my own little zone over here, and other
Right.
people won't care as much.
There
you know,
should be
right?
room for that too, so everyone can come out and go
That-
to a damn show. You know.
You have like the put up like a barricade. It's like COVID, still afraid of COVID over here.
yeah.
Wanting to fucking
Yeah.
party and
I
mosh
think
and
it's
rage.
such a- yeah.
That is
I
kind
don't
of
give
where
a
we're
fuck.
going.
That's what
where
they
we're
should.
going.
That's what they should. I mean,
Yeah.
I had someone who
That's America.
works. A friend of mine works in the medical industry, and he was telling me like, yeah, there's probably going to be another strain in the next 3 months, and the next 3 months after that. And I was just thinking, I was like, well, at some point, people are going to say, fuck it, and they're not going to want to deal with whatever this new strain is, even if.
I mean,
I mean,
some
it's
people have
so-
said that from the beginning.
Oh yeah, some
Yeah.
people said that from
a
the
lot
beginning.
of people.
I mean, my tune's definitely changed, and not to say that you know, again, it's like I am my own person, and I have my opinions and all that shit. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm like listen to a lot of people, but you know, the way that like our state, not to pivot like too quick into politics, but like
Whoa.
Yeah.
Hey, we're musicians.
no, I know, but I went from feeling like, okay, this is something we all need to take seriously and do our part. And, you know, let's shut down the state and like let's see how bad it is first.
Mhm.
And then by summer, I was like, okay, I think we like California totally missed the mark on how they were supposed to. Like they had Arco Arena and all of these facilities set up for overflow that never got used.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like we're shut right back down again. And I think it's almost like the conversation about whether or not what is actually worse for the most amount of people is really hard conversation to have because
Yeah.
COVID kills old people generally, you know, like for the most part. But the economy's shut down for the whole, like everybody else. And so, you know, you can't make that argument open up because what you're essentially saying is kill my grandma to some people, and you
Yeah.
can't make the other case. It's just a total clusterfuck.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that it's, you know, this is a pretty unprecedented situation. And I've always, like, for me personally, like, you know, everyone likes to rag on the governor, and I get it. And,
Yeah.
And I do. You know, I get it. But I also feel like, how can you be in
Damned
that
if you
job?
do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
can you please anybody
You
in
can't.
that role?
No.
I mean, because you could make the argument that the best course of action would have been like a nationwide like lockdown for
Totally.
like 6 to 8 weeks, like
Right.
right at the beginning.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, if that had happened, people would have gone apeshit about it because
Fuck yeah.
because even the shutdown we did in California back in March of last year, like at the time, people were like, "This is the end of the world. This is
Yeah.
extreme."
Right.
And so, I mean, you know, people don't have the operational vocabulary of how to deal with a situation like this because
No.
it's not something we've dealt with. So I think we've learned a lot from it, but I also don't personally really know what the best way is or has been.
Right.
And I just try to, you know, I just try to be cognizant of the people around me and their concerns. You know, if
Totally.
I'm around somebody who's older or who has a weakened immune system, like
Right.
I have no problem wearing a mask and distancing
yeah.
and stuff. You know.
Yeah, it's interesting what hills people are willing to die on these
Yeah,
days.
right.
It's really
yeah,
like,
it's like I don't wear a mask.
Yeah.
Like it's like okay,
and I wear 3 masks.
Yeah.
It's like, God, you guys are
So
also.
that's the new thing now is 2 masks?
I mean, I guess it was suggested, but I mean, my kind of, I always go back to, well, if 2 masks actually did, and I mean, I'm sure they do to some degree. Like, I don't want to be that guy, but like, from the beginning, I've seen people wearing the face shields,
Yeah.
wearing all this shit. You know, going into like, you know, you go into a grocery store, you can't go anywhere, but you can go into a grocery store where people are touching all the items on the shelf.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, well,
A lot
you know,
of
and then you're dealing with
inconsistencies.
asymptomatic spread, which is huge in this case. So
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's like it's a totally unprecedented situation, and it's a shame that it's happened at a time where people are so. I mean, I guess it's kind of really showed where like America is such an interesting place, because if we were to do something like a national lockdown,
Mhm.
I think it'd be very split 50-50. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
there's Americans who won't stand for that shit.
Totally.
They'll fight you
Yeah.
to the death. They'll
Right.
die on that
and
hill.
it's
Yeah.
weird because both sides are right in their own weird way,
Yeah.
in my opinion. You know, and
there's-
it's like,
There's valid points.
But it
Yeah,
comes back to
across
the
the board.
individual too. Like
Mhm.
that for me, that's the best solution, because you can't just put one thing over the whole country.
Yeah.
Not everyone's gonna agree with that. So it comes down to the individual. Hey, what are you comfortable with? You want to wear a mask? Wear a fucking mask. You want to not go to the store? You want to get delivery? You don't give a fuck. You want to walk around? Like, okay. And the business owners have their own options to say, hey, we require you a mask. You know, we're gonna deny you service, or
yeah,
it all comes down to the individual choices. You know, these people are living their lives, and
I mean, I agree with you, but the counter argument with that would be like, is there kind of a third option of the common good? You know, when you're
Right.
dealing with a disease that spreads in group settings.
I agree. But
Mhm.
again, that's a template that goes over, and not everyone's gonna agree with that. And there's gonna be
the line. It's hard to
strife in
find
there.
that line,
Yeah.
and it's going to be so different for so many people.
I almost go to like there almost isn't a line. Like that's
Yeah.
just not gonna work. But that sounds really like final and like, you know, cut and dry, which is not.
Yeah, I think this whole thing is really like in myself too. You have to sacrifice some of maybe your principles on
Yeah.
both sides.
I think everyone has had to do
Everyone
that. a little
has,
bit,
yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting. Oh, hi, kitty.
We got a friend.
Yeah, you know, it's like I've spent a lot of time trying to dig into as much research as I can. And, you know, I don't have like the vocabulary to understand what's happening
Right.
at like the cellular level. So, you know, you have to trust the conclusions scientists are making.
Yeah.
But even that's hard sometimes. And I mean,
That's all you really got.
that's all you really
Yeah,
got.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you know, everyone, doesn't matter if you're conservative or you're liberal, and you know, you can find a study that supports your claim.
Everyone can.
Everyone can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
Well,
it's just an odd time.
Yeah, and that's kind of a broader point there about all the way information is being delivered right now, and the way that, you know, you can filter your input stream to just the sources that you
To
agree
what
with.
you want. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it just becomes a giant confirmation bias machine, and that's what we're seeing, and that's why
Right.
it's become so hard to have dialogue with people, because you're either in this info
They're
stream
in
or
that
that info
cycle.
stream,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
like completely different, not just ideologically, but even what they're
Factually.
factually.
Yeah,
they have their own
absolutely.
set of facts.
Right.
So it's a very weird time, and it's harder and harder for me to find like just like independent angles or like independently verified information. You know, it's just you
Yeah.
know, the bias is so thick in so many areas.
Yeah, it is crazy. There's
Do your own research.
yeah, do your own research.
Yeah.
And that means, you know, if you read a Vox article about something, that means checking the conservative
Mhm.
one
The
too,
other side,
yeah.
yeah.
or looking at it. I mean, that's what's difficult, is trying, like, very few people I think have the time. You know, like I mentioned this on one of the other podcasts I did. It's like, I'm interested in politics. Like I spend time reading, I spend time doing this, and I don't expect other people to in that way, where it's like, you know, if I have an hour free of my day, or I'll listen to a politics podcast, or I'll do that while I'm cooking dinner, or like, you know, it's just what I'm into. But I know a lot of people, they
Yeah.
come home, they're working 8 hours, they have a family, they have this, they put their kids to bed, and it's like, they only get what information shows up on their phone.
So that
on-
was the point of news in the beginning, right? Was like, hey, you go to work, we got this economy thing going on, and like we're gonna tell you what's going on, and then you can just go do your thing.
Yeah,
And now we're here.
it's the incentive of the money.
Advertising and all that.
Yeah, the incentive is on
Mhm.
attention, and
It started out good.
yeah, I mean,
It's a good idea.
it is. It's
We're
it's
talking
hard.
about the news media.
yeah. Yeah.
In theory, it's good.
In theory.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
like
you know,
communism.
like you've probably seen the articles that the ratings on CNN and MSNBC and even Fox News, like everything
Yeah.
is tanking.
Right.
Trump is gone,
Yeah.
and like you know, that's why I think the media was
That was
so
their golden pony, right?
they were so behind
they-
Trump, you know, during the
They
2016
loved him.
primaries because he drove those crazy headlines, and like,
Right.
the crazy headlines keep
Yeah.
people tuning in.
Do you remember the first one? When he said that, well, one of the first ones is when Hillary Clinton got schlonged in Iowa or something like that.
He said that.
Well, yeah, he said. like, it was like, yeah, she got really schlonged, and
Wow.
and it like and I remember like,
That is
so that's hilarious to me from
Yeah.
like not because I'd ever say that.
Well, that's kind of why it's funny. I think,
It's
right?
funny.
Yeah,
It's just
who
so
would
like
say
what
that?
kind of politicians say that shit. But you know, like immediately, like the kind of like like CNN, New York Times, they all jumped on that. That was all they could talk about. Like,
outrage.
how could they? Yeah, like they don't use that. Like they don't use similar language or something. Like or they
Yeah.
never have, or I don't know. And I'm not a Trump defender. I think there's a lot wrong with Trump, but I think that what he did show. I think in 2016 there were a lot of people that just said, "Fuck this! This isn't working for me."
Yeah,
And that's the decision they made.
And
I think
he was the guy standing there telling them what they wanted to hear.
yeah. He was getting the resentment vote, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason 2020 didn't go better for him, is because he was the institution at that point.
Right.
And so the people who are, you know, it's hard
Still
to be a
disenfranchised.
bomb thrower while you're in the halls of power.
right,
You know, it's a
Yeah.
lot easier when you're on the outside leading the mob
totally.
than to be inside leading the mob.
Right.
Is like literally in this case.
Well, and he just made it so hard. He made it so hard for himself because he would just do so much stupid shit all the time. Like remember when the hurricane was coming to Florida, and
The paper tells.
no, the hurricanes get projected,
Oh
right?
yeah.
But he's like trying to spin his narrative, so he draws the big black line of where he thinks the hurricane's gonna go to like project out, just because someone was disagreeing with him. And you know, in my eyes, it's like I think actually
I didn't see that one.
it was funny. I mean, I think that Trump is one of those personalities that it's very hard to acknowledge anything that he does that's positive because of who he is as a person.
Yeah.
And that is kind of the curse of, you know, his like personality.
That's what I was gonna say. Personality. Yeah, it's the curse of it.
And it's like why I could never get behind him, because I was like, okay, well, you know, it's like, yeah, I appreciate the fact that at the end of your presidency, you like pulled a lot of troops out of the Middle East. Like that's been a hill I've really wanted. I mean, that's been something I've been very passionate about, you know?
He did criminal justice reform. You know, got some nonviolent offenders out of jail, and
Yeah, see, that's good. And even again, it's like people, you know, people on the left, I think, are reticent to talk about this issue. But like, you know, we can't have a fully open. You know, should we build a border wall? Should we waste our money? I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. But do we have to have some type of border control? You know, every country has some type of border control.
no. Well, I mean, I think most people like in the Democratic Party would agree with that as
Yeah.
well. I think it's just. I think the bigger question though is like the demagoguery and the using
Grandiosity.
well, just like using immigrants, vilifying immigrants. You
Totally,
know,
absolutely.
I find that very repugnant.
Oh, I hated it.
And I feel like there's, you know, we have to look around at who's in our community and acknowledge that these people are Americans as well, and,
Right.
and deserve like a seat at the table, and
Mhm.
and also like you know, normalizing their status would be beneficial in terms of tax revenue and in terms of, you know, policing and just
Well,
like
just
getting
talent.
everyone on the same page.
Right.
They're
It's
already
like-
here, you know.
Right.
They're already contributing. So like, let's invite them to be full members.
And
you
I
know, that's
think
how I see it.
I agree with you in the fact that I think that America's built on the strength of immigrants. You know, I mean, there's people who come from all over the world to the United States, and
Why we're all here.
that's why we're all here.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and I think in Trump, he was a bull in a china shop, and he just couldn't, like, he amped up the right, the people on the far right who are really sort of like waiting for someone to kind of light a fire under their ass, and he really amped up all the shit that's going on, justifiably so in some ways, with the other side. And yeah, it's the immigrant thing is interesting to me because there's like a way that I feel like it can get productively talked about that is like sort of like what you touched on, Stephen, that it kind of doesn't ever get touched on, which is like, yeah, we have to have some sort of parameters, but we also have to recognize that, like, what better way to build a better America than have people who really want to be here become productive members of the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, immigrants, like, per capita are less likely to commit crimes. They're more likely to work 2 jobs, have families,
Pay taxes.
and actually be like, socially conservative also. Like, I think people on the right, a lot of these people would eventually gravitate towards, the Republicans, just on cultural issues. So.
Right.
But, it's hard to have a nuanced conversation about this because, it's hard to have a nuanced conversation about anything.
Yeah, it is.
these days.
Well, we're outside of the cycle. I don't watch mainstream news, and I mean, you see it. I do see it sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's not something I'm like following and
No.
actively like digesting all the time. And so when you step outside of those two narratives, it becomes a lot easier to look at both sides of things and have a conversation like this that's nice and flowing. I'm sure we'll find some things we disagree about, and we'll,
Well, yeah,
that's the beauty of it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And that was kind of to bring it back to your initial question of like, what brings us on the podcast. Like that was what really brought my attention was, before you even started the podcast, I remember you posted something up to the effect of, you just want to have everyday people sitting down, having a conversation about politics that's like, actually involves listening.
Totally.
And
No weapons.
Isn't a shouting match.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
isn't just a talking points from, one party or the other.
CNN.
Yeah.
And, I'm in following your podcast, I've been glad to see that it has a wide range of topics. And,
Totally.
and you being a musician and us being musicians,
Yeah.
I really wanted to.
High in openness.
Yeah.
Creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big 5.
Big 5,
The
exactly.
big 5.
I did study psychology.
Oh, I love the Big 5.
Yeah. So I did my senior thesis was actually running the Big 5 personality types against your reaction to images from tarot cards.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I was trying to see if, like, for example, openness would correlate to the image of the sun in the tarot, which is like this very,
That's very
beaming,
cool.
positive
What
kind of.
were the results?
I did find a correlation there, and there was another one between like agreeableness and art or something like that. There was a couple. I had some like administrative issues. There was something going on with the administration at the time, so I only actually my sample size was way too small essentially to gather
It's
a
like
lot.
some
But
Carl Jung shit right there.
Sample size.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's what I was drawing on because therapists use the tarot sometimes as kind of like a Rorschach test, as what's called like a projective.
Like what's kind of
test.
like your initial thought that you have.
Just from the images.
Yeah, like you draw a card and look at it and see what it provokes in you.
Interesting.
Same as looking at any kind of art.
Right. Or any, even to kind of any kind of content, any kind of like
Yeah,
opposing
music.
opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you could use Rorschach for anything then, huh?
Yeah.
True. My girlfriend and I, we did the Big 5 and compared our results, and it's interesting to see where we overlap and where we're like completely different. Like absolutely, like, okay, so I'm like 99th percentile in disagreeableness. So it's like I'm very blunt. Like I don't really like care if I hurt people's feelings, if what I'm saying, if and this is like something I'm working on too, but it's like
Yeah, dude.
like I've told people
Me
that
too.
I've told like annoying customers at the bar like fuck you. What are you doing? Get
Yeah.
out of here. Like don't
That's
and
tough in the service industry.
It's tough, but at the same time it's like
Well,
you're gonna let them take advantage of you
Yeah,
and be
people
crazy.
step over the line. You
Right.
gotta tell them.
This was like back when I was working at the Holbrook, it was a little bit more of a shit show, but
Yeah.
and then she's on the completely like she's very polite, very agreeable. So it's like we balance each other out a little bit.
Yeah. I think that's good in a partnership.
I think so too.
You don't want to like be hanging out with your clone.
No,
You know,
I think it'd be honestly really good for most people to have to understand the sort of biological clockwork, some, or psychological clockwork. Not that you can't change it, but some of it,
Well,
I
we're
imagine,
wired. We're all wired differently, right?
We are.
And certain things are certain ways, and
Nature and nurture, I think, are two factors.
hell yeah.
Like go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, I think the mental health is like a super overlooked area in this country, and like if people
100%.
had like actual counseling support, like especially through adolescence and stuff, and going into early adulthood,
Yeah.
I think that would solve so many of the issues that we see in this country.
Right.
Like I was just thinking about the gun, because the gun control issues back in the headlines today,
Right.
and I was just it historically I've been more of a lefty, I guess, but as time goes by, I find myself more and more interested in the Constitution and interested in those original rights. And like, I think the Second Amendment is important, and it's there for a reason, and we need it.
Mm-hmm.
And that these shootings are a horrible thing, and people using guns and crimes is a horrible thing. But like trying to legalize guns seems like you're going at the wrong symptom.
And those are, you're going after the people who haven't broken any laws. Like these are law-abiding, Second Amendment respecting citizens, and they just want to have their guns.
Right.
They've never done anything wrong.
Exactly.
Ever,
And a lot of these people already feel antagonized, by the
Yeah.
federal government, and like we don't like. I just don't think it's like if you try to take guns away from people, it's just going to push us further to the brink of some kind of civil war
100%.
scenario.
Yeah. And there's lots of.
That's another hill people are willing to die
Absolutely.
on right there.
That's
Well,
a big one.
And it sucks because the gun issue too is something that would really be benefited by like a reasonable debate, and both sides can point to. The liberals can say, okay, well, look at how many kids end up dying from suicide or from accidentally killing themselves because you have a gun in the house. And then the conservatives can say, yeah, well, look at all the violent crime that happens in democratically run cities and guns that aren't supposed to be there compared to my rural small town.
How well is that gun control working, right?
Well, and it's like...
It's a fair point.
Yeah, it is a fair point.
Like Chicago. I'm from Chicago. And
the murder rate was like 150% higher last year.
They had a full-out handgun ban,
right.
which was eventually thrown out by the Supreme Court, but they had it in place for like 10 years. And it's like, meanwhile, we had the highest murder rate, the highest number of shootings.
Yeah.
So go figure on that one.
Totally. I mean, again, it's one of those things where... radical centrism, or at least being willing to like
radical centrism.
I'm radically in the middle.
Someone called me out on, or a former friend, because he like sent me a message. He's like, it was basically about my reaction to like what happened in Atlanta, and all I was saying was, let's maybe withhold the race card before we understand everything that's happening. Which is, I don't think is like a radical opinion, but I had some,
That's a pretty reasonable...
In my eyes, yeah. A former friend was like, fuck you. Like,
dare you?
Like, all you, like, have you been you've been posting so much centrist shit? And I was like, dude, I've got no time for you. Yeah.
So the center's the new target. Like, if you're not in one of those narratives or on one of those sides, they're coming right for you. Because if you speak up and say, hey guys, what if we... let's talk about this, or like let's have a conversation. Like, nope, and then it's all over.
Yeah,
they're all in. Some people.
I think really what it comes down to though, like especially like the Atlanta thing and his reaction to that is like people are uncomfortable with complexity, and
absolutely,
it's so much more like comforting and reassuring to accept like a prepackaged understanding of what's going on in a narrative.
Makes you feel better.
It's like, okay, it's this bad guy. That's and this is why.
This is why.
And if we just did this, then everything would be fine. And I see that not just on the left, but on the right as well. It's a lot of, and it's a lot harder to be like
it's more complex.
Somebody who's trying to understand all the shades of gray and trying to operate with some empathy towards all the different actors in whatever happened.
Yeah,
like it's not just. It's so much easier, like even somebody who commits crimes and who does terrible things, like shouldn't we at least try to understand this person on a human level as a brother, a sister, a neighbor, citizen, and maybe learn from it and maybe learn how to prevent that kind of thing from happening instead of just saying, oh, they're a monster, Oh
yeah, you fucked up at 18, you're or 19, like the drug thing too is what, and that's a point I think that liberals make really well. And they kind of hammer people over the head with in a good way, but it's like the way that we sentence people for drugs in this country. It's so fucked, man. And it's like,
especially now when things are like legal in half the states.
I feel terrible when I'm smoking weed and I'm like, dude, someone went to jail for like 40 years for this 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, it's mind blowing.
So there's still people in jail for weed
Yeah, like for
convictions.
3 strikes laws back in the 80s, or
And then
Even,
there's
even in California, while it's legalized here now.
I'm pretty sure.
so.
Yeah.
Wow.
and I mean, and keep in mind, in like 25 or more states, it's still totally illegal, and people are
Yeah.
still getting arrested and thrown in jail right now for it.
When I was in Texas, when I was touring, we brought over, like, we played a show in El Paso.
Oh
and
man,
we had
that's a weird town.
Oh, it's so weird.
I've never been there.
the most cops per 1,000 citizens in the country.
Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah,
There's
'cause it's
fucking
right,
everywhere.
it's
huh?
right on the border. It's actually really like a pretty
Wow.
nice city. Like there's a lot of violence next door in Juarez and everything, but
Right.
like it's interesting because the cops are mostly Hispanic. Like 60% of the city is Hispanic people.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean it's very interesting. Kind of like got an old west sort of feel. Like
It's a strange
desert.
place.
It is a strange place.
Why is it strange?
Well, like, I mean, I went there with my band as well.
Yeah.
And I just remember, like, we stayed in a hotel, and it was just, like, there were a lot of, like, unmarked vans at the hotel.
Well, that's the police presence.
No shit.
A lot of
Yeah.
it, totally. And
But just,
after dark, the town goes quiet.
That's
You know, at
it.
least when I was there, I don't
Like
wanna
if you're
make
out,
broad
you're up to no
statements.
good type kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just kind of like, I mean, the border is like a 5-minute drive. Like it's there, you know? And so I
Mhm.
think that's one of the big hubs that they kind of focus on. But I mean, when we were playing there, it's like right outside they've got the checkpoint in Texas. So it's like smoking weed. That's like a no-go. You can't have it. They have dogs come around and they sniff you.
Whoa.
So we forgot that, and so I had an ounce of weed with me, and we
Oh.
finished our show, and we were loading up. I was like, dude, what are we supposed to do with this? Blah blah blah. Like we put all the oil that we had, we like undid our guitars and put it in the back and screwed it on.
Nice.
But I had all this weed, and so I just went up to a homeless guy. I was like, hey man, do you smoke weed? He's like, when I can. I go, here you go.
Oh, I
Just
fucking
handed
made
him
that
an ounce of
guy's
weed.
day, dude.
Well, you
Oh
put
my-
the oil inside the guitar itself, like in the pickups, or?
We put it in the electronics in the back.
Wow, that's clever.
Do you remember
Yeah.
what kind of weed it was? Was it like Cali? I mean,
It was
like,
something good.
It was like Cali weed.
way
and
better
it's
than
like-
anything anybody else.
You
anybody
fucking
else
blew that
said.
guy's mind that night. He went.
Yeah.
He went to Mars.
I smuggled a joint in a jar full of homemade jam that my aunt made.
Oh,
Because I was
nice.
going from Colorado back home, and I had like
Wrap
a
it in
really good
cellophane or
pre-roll.
something?
I wrapped it in cellophane, put it in the jelly.
Hell yeah, dude.
Smart.
Yeah,
See, that's when like doing
some
casual
like
drugs
jail
was
smuggling
fun.
shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, kids nowadays,
They
if
don't
you're
know.
listening to this, you'll never understand how
Yeah.
good you have it now.
Yeah.
Because when I was in high school, we had to do some.
You know what
hood
we
rat-
had to do?
we had to
You
do
know
some
we
hood
had
rat
to do.
shit to
Well,
get stuff.
you grew up around here.
Yeah, I went to high school here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is, you guys are used to being in
It's
you know,
California.
this is where it's grown, and like you know people who are growing.
everywhere. Yeah.
Like when I, in Chicago, it's like when I was 21, 22, like I would have friends. We would drive to the ghetto like in the middle of the night and spend $65 on an eighth of like the
Yeah.
worst weed you can imagine, just
Yeah.
like sawdust type
Ugh.
stuff.
$65.
Yeah, for
I haven't spent.
and like risk our lives.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
terrible
yeah.
neighborhoods.
I haven't
you know?
spent money on weed, and God, since I was probably 16 years
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
Things you take for granted.
Indeed.
NorCal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
straight up. God, what was I going to ask you guys? Yeah, so what do you think, like, so now that we're sort of hopefully coming out of this COVID thing, do you think that there will be kind of like an easing of tension between people on political sides, or do you think people have sort of like cemented their impression of the other person?
I wonder where we go after this whole Trump saga, because that was 4 years of madness,
Yeah.
and that definitely like revved the whole thing up, and
Yeah.
then now we're like past that, and it's kind of a question mark.
It does seem like so far this year has been like since the inauguration, like things have settled down a little bit.
Totally.
So, like,
at least you don't have
the
Trump.
escalated.
At least you don't have Trump saying shit.
Yeah, and I've heard that like the Republicans have trouble using Biden as like a way to ramp up their base, because people, like, obviously not a lot of people really like Biden,
Right.
but they're not like, they don't hate him the same way that they hated
I feel
Hillary.
bad for him.
I know. How do
I
you
know,
follow Trump? With all that madness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't, again, like he's somebody who historically has been considered a centrist, and
Right.
if you look at his policies, in the 70s and 80s, he was to the right of
Conservative.
he was to the
Yeah.
right of the party, which was already moving rightwards in those days, the
Mhm.
Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So I mean, what I think that when Trump, one of Trump's major mistakes was trying to characterize him as this like Antifa hard left guy,
No.
which was like, I think people on the left were like laughing at that.
Oh yeah.
you know?
Well, I mean, immediately people in like Portland and Seattle, and I mean, everyone was out in the streets saying like, whatever the sign said, like no gods, no masters, fuck Joe Biden type of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the conservatives have kind of like, they're a little bit more like unified in a weird way. I feel like, at least because I feel like Democrats fight themselves so much. Like there's kind of like the wing, like the AOC, and then like the Biden sort of wing.
I think both parties have that going on.
Yeah, actually. I guess you're right.
Because you do have like in the Republicans, you do have like the Mitt Romneys and the more centrist Republicans, I guess, who are like anti-Trump, the ones who voted against him in the second impeachment and stuff.
Yeah,
it's just maybe a smaller group than the centrist Democrats, which is like the majority of the party still, and you've got the lefties, like the Bernie wing is still like pretty marginal in terms of the overall.
What do you guys, if you guys had to like, what type of person would you vote for? Like ideally, because I think we're in like this kind of area that we're in right now. There hasn't been, Obama for me was like for like 2 years, and then I sort of became very depressed at how he was actually doing. And I really want, as like someone, like I really want someone who's like aspirational, who can actually kind of like unite people. And I guess I'm kind of at a loss for what qualities.
Agreed. It's really hard right now. Yeah. It's really hard. Like, I mean, like one of my top presidents would like JFK for that. Yeah. He really
that's what came to my mind too.
He inspired people across the lines. He didn't seem like a strong partisan.
Fucking shot him.
He shot him.
True.
And he had that kind of, he was able to like inspire people, and Obama had that at the beginning, and I think once he got into office, he proved, in my opinion, to be a somewhat ineffective leader. And,
people call it pragmatism, but I call it, you're not good enough at your job to get what you promised.
He kind of took his hands off the wheel like right away and didn't really deliver, because I followed that campaign really closely. I was a big Obama supporter.
Dude, when I voted for Obama, and I was like crying, I was so excited because I was just I was interested in this shit, and I was just dealing with George Bush being president.
It was a sea change after Bush.
And it felt like
it. It didn't turn out to be as much of a sea change as we all hoped. Obviously. But I think that we need to have. I don't know how we get there, but I think we do need to have a new movement of people and leadership that attempts to transcend the typical divisions and attempts to listen to the other side and incorporate parts of what they're saying, and inspire and lay out a vision for where we can go. I think that's a lot of what's missing right now.
I think we got too many old people in there too.
Yeah.
No offense to all the old people.
Not to hate on old people, but like things are changing, man.
Well, I think we do need term limits. I think we've got way too many people who have been there for way too long. Well,
and it's not the current age thing that you just touched on, Sean. It's like it's not reflective of how politics has usually been in this country. I mean, believe it or not, it's like I think right now the median age of the average Democrat's like near 60, if not over 60.
Crazy. That's
and it's lower for Republicans, which is kind of actually surprising. Mm-hmm. But it's like, what kind of understanding of my current problems do you have?
Yeah.
I talk to people, and I have family, and like we have political discussions, and it often comes up where it's like, well, part of the reason why I'm kind of getting my shit together, close to 30 years old, is because I've been spending most of my income on renting a place, a small place for most of my life
to live.
It's like it's not comparable in that sense.
See, that's what the older generation. I'm kind of going through that with my parents' generation and then my grandparents. But there's such a disconnect with what it's either something like they're stuck. They think it's they think it's the way it was when they were young, and they look at us and go like, "Why can't you just do the thing I did and be successful?" And you try to tell them like, hey, like shit's different, man. Like it's not what you think it is, and there's that. For me, that's been the disconnect of trying to explain to them like what, or maybe why it looks like they look at me and they say, what's he doing? I don't get it, or something. Say that this is why it looks like this is because this and this. But
Right.
they seem to not be able to
Well, wages
see it.
have
You know?
declined since the
Right.
60s,
Right.
and the cost of living has gone up.
Going up. Cost of
of
college
housing,
has gone
college,
up. Everything
food,
is going up.
Food, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the process that started in the 70s. You know, there was a lot of economic turmoil in the 70s.
Right.
That was the beginning of all the outsourcing of jobs and, you know, the disintegration of the labor unions.
Are you familiar with the embedded growth obligation? This idea.
Mm-mm.
So it's this economist. Well, that technically is not an economist. He's a math guy and like a hedge fund manager. But Eric Weinstein, he talks a lot about this idea that growth, like he kind of makes the case like this. He's like, go into anyone's house and their kitchen will pretty much look exactly the same as it did in the 60s or 50s, minus like some like technological upgrades. But like that technology, that the actual physical stuff, was all invented a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, in order for these companies to make money to meet this standard they have of all, you know, continually having to grow,
They're not
Right.
inventing anything.
they're not
right?
inventing. What
Yeah,
they're doing
yeah.
is the
Obsolescence.
companies that are inventing things are it's data and it's internet
Mm-hmm.
and it's technology. And besides that, what? You know, what are you gonna do? Like, and so people get kind of like, we compare the United States to times like the 50s and the 40s and the 60s. We go, well, why can't it just be like that? It's like, because the whole structure
Was being built, right?
was being built and
yeah,
was
yeah.
different then. You know,
Yeah.
it's like we have to
So
rethink.
We've kind of arrived, I put that in quotation marks, in a sense, to like the industrialized world, and like now we have these other things to worry about.
Yeah.
So we're not like you said, we don't have to invent all these things. Like we're already here. Like we already have microwaves and refrigerators. And,
And
all these
part of
things.
the byproduct, I think, of that is like, I think a lot of people are going, yeah, well, really all I have is my passion, so I'm going to do that because that's all that matters.
that's some Star Trek shit right there, man.
Yeah. But it's like, you know, it's weird because I feel like it's partially, it's true, but it's like it hasn't been dealt with. Like, I think that's why.
Or have we just not realized it yet?
Well, they were talking about
Yeah,
that a
I
lot in
think-
the 50s and 60s too, like futurists at the time.
Yeah.
That, you know, we'd arrive at a place where, you know, a lot of the
I can just play my guitar.
a lot of the labor is automated, and people will just have all this leisure time, and like what will you do with it all and stuff.
Yeah.
And
You guys, like, do you think UBI is a good idea?
UBI?
Universal Basic Income? Like
Mhm.
Andrew Yang, his sort of idea, $1,000 a month, no matter what.
Man, where does that money come from? That's what I'm no economist, but like just like magical, like here you go.
Yeah.
Like,
He had
it's-
I can't remember how he explained.
well,
His argument is that it would actually be cheaper than what is going on now.
I mean, I could see that. It would definitely
far as,
stimulate
like,
the economy.
welfare and stuff like that. Or?
Yeah, and just in terms of like costs that we're spending on, like his kind of idea is that it would give people more leverage to choose what they want to do. Like they could sell rather than raise the minimum wage continually, which, you know, in my opinion, a lot of what most likely will happen to a lot of people is, I think, that small businesses won't be able to pay employees, and then only large companies will be able to hire. So it's great, like
That's what's
Amazon's
happening.
for it.
Yeah.
They're
And
I'm
I'm
not
established.
And yeah, I mean,
But
So-
those companies are also going to move more and more towards automation, whereas
true.
small businesses can't really afford that.
true. Yeah, that's also a good point.
Star Trek.
Yeah, I think Andrew Yang has stated like it gives people more opportunity to basically choose what they have, like that padding.
So was there like a
Yeah.
balance of like, hey, we're gonna give you $1,000 per month, but we're not gonna have these government programs, or not all of them, or we're gonna reorganize some of
Do you
them.
keep
Like,
Social
is that
Security? Do you keep Obamacare?
Yeah.
I can't remember where he said he was going to skim from, because something's got to be skimmed from.
That's
Or would
what-
it be?
yeah.
Or is he more of a Bernie type, social democrat? Like, let's tax the rich and the corporations at a higher rate in order to afford, more spending on working class people. Which,
Yeah.
in theory, like I do support that kind of thinking. But
Mhm.
I mean, fundamentally though, I think like these are all like throwing band-aids on a gaping wound.
Yeah,
like
it's too simplistic.
If you take our current structure of society and just give everyone $1,000, like everything that's already wrong is still going to be wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about the people that are actual drug addicts.
Right.
You
Throw
know?
$1,000 at them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Like
you
I
just poured gasoline on the fire, basically? Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think we need to. I don't know how we get there, and it's tough, and there's still that idealist in me that thinks we can get there. But I think it really comes down to adopting something more like the tribal approach that our ancestors had, where people are more involved with each other on the local level, on the community level.
That's where it starts, man.
And
Yeah.
and no one is getting left out the way that
Yeah.
people are getting left out in our society
There's
now.
a lot of people getting left behind.
Yeah.
I think there's a crisis of meaning. That's probably the biggest.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it always comes down to, I think people are really, like, we're still wired in a lot of ways that we were 100,000 years ago, and we're not fit to deal with, our brains are not, we haven't adapted to this reality. And I think a lot of people, it's like we don't have these structures like religion that kind of told us how to live our lives, and for all of like,
And definitely not now.
definitely
right?
not now.
Right,
Yeah, for all the
right.
criticisms of religion, I think that my tune on it has changed, and I think that a lot of people like just don't have the kind of basic, myself included, we're all work in progress, but like just don't have the basic sort of like framework for how to like approach reality.
Like morality, ethics.
Yeah, morale, everything, and so it gets.
So I've been going back and forth on this. I feel the same
Yeah.
way. Like I look back at my upbringing and who I was around and not having too much support around and wondering. I lost my train of thought.
Oh, you're good.
Say it again.
I was just thinking like
Like a framework, morality.
Yeah,
Yeah,
religion.
framework. Like, is that a blessing or is that a curse? And I guess it could be both. But the blessing is that you get to build your own framework, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
have a religion to help me or hold me back, right?
totally.
So that could be very bad too, because then you could just, I don't know, go into nihilism or something.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
Full on,
where we're at as a society.
Nihilism.
Well,
It's-
just
well,
like we're trying to assimilate all these disparate worldviews and all this new information,
yeah,
and there's no real like strong consensus of what's going on.
right.
And I think that's part of what's so appealing of like the political worldviews that people are getting into is like it has that same comfort that being a member of a religion does. It's a similar kind of part of the brain that's being stimulated of like, okay, I can just appreciate reality through this lens now.
Right.
And like
Tribal.
the things that don't agree with it, I'm going to have an explanation for it that fits in with that, and
Yeah.
not have to engage with
I
that.
guess
Right.
that could be a good thing and a bad thing too, because
Yeah.
like tribalism could go real far, and
Well,
then
it's-
they're killing each other. But
Yeah.
then it could be super productive and helpful in community and family and all that stuff.
We're conditioned. I think again,
It's tough.
I guess I'm sort of like an essentialist in a way. Like I think a lot of what we're going through can be explained through science in some way, and like I kind of see like the tribal impulse is really important for us to protect ourselves. Again, you take it way back into human history. It's like, okay, we 100 people max was kind of like a main group. At least that's
Right.
kind of like the research just
Or less even, right?
or less, yeah. And so when you
You don't have enough bandwidth.
and there's not
Yeah.
enough resource. There might
Resource.
not be enough resources
Yeah.
for another 100 people. So you're naturally inclined to look at,
Mhm.
and it's very easy. Like it's very easy when, for example, you're in like the steppes in Tibet or something, and then all of a sudden there's like another 100 people come from like India and they look differently than you.
Mhm.
It's very easy to see that, and it's very easy to like attach something to that like difference in their
Yeah,
identity.
that's the roots of racism and
Yeah.
that kind of. Well, I think also too like basic psychology is like you grow in trust. You grow in trusting people just by being around them with time.
Yeah, definitely.
And so a lot of people who I think are have more racial prejudices, it's because they haven't really
Isolated.
spent time with that group.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, a
and
lot of that is ignorance. I feel like they
Totally.
just don't know. They
Right.
have no framework, I guess.
they haven't had a conversation like this.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I think going back to like the small community as like the unit of our society rather than trying to solve things on a national scale,
Right.
is try to go more local, because people that you spend time with, even if you disagree, even if you have different worldviews, you grow to trust and respect them,
Right.
like over time. Or
Absolutely.
unless they're really assholes, and then it's
Yeah.
like, well, it's still better to try to deal with that like head on than just
Those
say
exist
like
too.
then avoid that person forever. I'd still rather like have a conversation about why you're an asshole.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, and so in the social
Yeah.
world, like
I'm working on that.
people that are assholes generally get mediated through social interaction.
Mhm.
You don't find many assholes who happen to have like 60 friends and be like the life of the party.
The social butterfly, right?
The-
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it kind of depends. I mean, I'm sure obviously there's
Yeah.
exceptions to the
There's
rule.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, the smallest unit, like and this is I kind of am along the lines with you, where it's like, yeah, we need to start at like a family level, at a friend level. You know, I was lucky to be able to travel through the country and see places where it's like all black people live here, and then travel to places where it goes, okay, all white people live here. And at the end of the day, it's like we're all human beings. We all have certain wants and needs and interests, and like there's got to be a way for us to live with each other. See, it's, I mean,
You're so radical, Joe.
I know, man.
You need to tone that down. Tone that down.
But no, really, it was crazy. Like, I remember going to some places in like Indiana and like Ohio, and I mean, I guess more in like Bumpkin, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. Soybean, like towns where it's like 200 or 300 people, and all they do is grow soybeans.
Right.
So in there, you know, that is
but
their
one school.
Totally.
Sometimes it's like one grade school and high school, a K-12
Together,
school.
K-12.
and it's so known and established that if you grow up in an environment like that, what is the chance? What chance is there of you being like Antifa or whatever is like the farthest possible left of that conservative environment? It does happen, but it's, I mean, people generally conform to their surroundings in some ways.
Well,
do you think?
Less of a chance than someone living in like Portland.
Totally.
Right?
Well, yeah. I think it goes both ways, and I say this because
you can rebel against that.
The first band I was in that was touring, we were kind of a punk band. We were more experimental. We were kind of like Radiohead meets pop punk kind of a thing. I don't know.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We were really young and awkward, and you know, didn't do a good job of like interfacing with the people we were around. I think it was hard for us to like. We were all a little weird, kind of nerdy.
Yeah.
But we'd go to all these different, you know, more rural towns, more rural areas where they would have like anarchist bookstores or punk houses and throw shows. We did a lot of DIY touring.
Sick.
And that's where I met probably the furthest left people I've ever met is like specifically in Missoula, Montana, for example.
Oh shit.
Oh, crazy.
Or Flagstaff, Arizona.
Interesting.
Just different random towns that we would go to where you find this little collective of people who are like really trying to do like an anarcho-socialist, you know, experiment, like a community.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I think that's where you know, where the left and the right kind of circle back to each other is when you get into these small units where it's like, you know, I think most conservatives actually do want to help people in their lives who need help.
Yeah.
It's not like they don't care about poor people, or they don't care. I think the disagreement is in like, do we use this massive government apparatus to support those goals, or do we find other solutions?
And people look at that. People look at conservatives, and conservatives look at liberals in ways like conservatives they're assholes because they might put more emphasis on like personal responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, in my eyes, it's like, okay, that is, because I grew up in a more conservative environment. I saw that like going to church as a kid. It's like there's a necessity for that, but there's also a necessity for being empathic and taking into consideration people who, despite the amount of personal responsibility they may have,
people need help too.
People need help, man.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
Yeah.
It's got to be both, because we're not super beings. We're human. We fuck up, and we need help. We give help.
Yeah.
And again,
goes back and forth, you know?
I think the local thing, and like, you know, living in a small town, I've seen that more and more, where I've had a lot of connections with people across the spectrum politically, and come to really value that range.
Totally.
And like come
Tony.
to
Tony the bartender?
No, my stepdad.
Oh, okay.
I know that Tony too.
He's like hardcore Trump.
Yeah.
And
he used to come into the
but
bar
they're friends,
and
I mean,
we clicked and talked. And he's a musician, and you know,
Yeah.
he was in San Francisco in the 60s and had all these crazy experiences. And
Right.
you know, I just think we need to have that dialogue with each other at the local level.
Right.
We need to be able to like put our armor down and put our, you know, swords down, and just like really listen and like connect on a human level.
Totally.
And, that's
people don't
hard
put those
to do nowadays.
down anymore. That's the status quo. Is like, you always have your weapon. You got your armor on. Don't make eye contact. Don't, you know, rock the boat.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Yeah.
Like, everything's good. PC. Like, and that's tough.
You're missing out on. I mean, the best way to learn is to be able like to listen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and keep your ego in check. And understand you don't know shit.
Yeah.
And
no one does.
You know, it's like there's a lot of like you kind of like you'll learn, I think, as you grow up that you may disagree with older people, but there's a lot of wisdom that comes with age, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, as I've kind of grown up, I was like, I was at like the oh god, how am I forgetting this? The Occupy Wall Street protests when I was in like 2008, 2009. And I was super into that. I was like, yeah, fuck it all, burn it all down, because that's where like my passion and my energy felt it needed to be channeled. But I actually didn't really have an idea of what it was I was like actually fighting. And I met a lot of people at those protests, some of whom were really cool. And like I met the guy, Daniel Ellsberg, who published the Pentagon Papers and eventually got Richard Nixon canned. That was very cool. But I met a lot of people who didn't really have, like, I wouldn't trust you running a Buffalo Wild Wings,
Right.
you know?
Let alone a revolution.
Let alone revolution.
Yeah.
And so as I got older, it's like I value more like the business owners that I've been able to interact with and even like come to terms with and say, hey, I mean, I've had talks with bosses like, hey, you know, $15 minimum wage, like, you understand why people are asking that? And they go, yeah, we understand. Do they understand that we actually will not be able to open?
Yeah.
And so
there's
Do you want a
drawback.
job or
right.
It's
I mean, that's just an
imaginary,
example, but it's like that helped me. I mean, I think about what if I stayed that person I was. A lot of people, I think, do on both sides.
and a lot of people have
Yeah.
stayed there. Yeah.
So you're kind of bound to naturally, you know, when you step outside of your own box, you're going to feel
Uncomfortable.
attacked in some
Well, and
ways.
you will be attacked.
You
and
will be,
lose
especially if you're loud like me. I was fucking loud.
I mean, I've lost friends on all ends of the spectrum,
Yeah.
and I'm not even really a very openly political person these
No.
days. I don't post a lot of politics. I
No.
don't talk about. I'm not even on Facebook.
You're a chiller.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really, you know, I'd rather talk about other things
Yeah.
most of the time.
Especially if it's going to get heated, you know.
Yeah.
Like we can't just sit down and talk. Then
Yeah.
let's not do that. Like,
yeah.
You're going to want to punch me, or I'm going to want to punch you, type thing.
What do you guys think that like the role of art is in kind of bridging this gap?
Man, that's one of the keys right there. Because
Like art that can speak to
yeah, everyone has ears, man. Like we
Art
can
crosses those barriers.
Yeah, we can write a song that a Republican and a Democrat likes.
Yeah, and that's you know, our
instantly
music
a
is
bridge,
we're not
you know?
Rage Against the Machine. You know,
Right.
we're not trying to write songs that are going to inspire the revolution. We're trying to write songs that are encourage people to do more inner work, you know, on a personal level.
Yeah.
And also the group experience of being at a show and
Totally.
listening to music and
it's
just
like that to me, and I mean this is kind of cliche, but like music is a religious experience in that way.
It should be. That's
Yeah.
the way to
Yeah.
respect the craft and actually write something that came from inside that is meaningful.
Totally.
Right.
Hopefully you can give that to someone else and they can feel it too. And,
Right.
yeah, it's
and that's the whole point of it.
It's a role that, you know, it goes back to the role of the shaman or the medicine man or the healer, you know, in past societies, was people who could go into this kind of trance dimension and interface with the unconscious and with the intuitive, and then bring something back
They
for everybody.
Glean something from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like
Get into some Joseph Campbell.
Yes.
Yes, man, I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, it's like you're bringing back the golden fleece that's gonna heal your culture and your society, and I think music can do that, and it doesn't have to be political to do that. It's really
Yeah.
more of a
It bridges any
in fact,
gap.
it shouldn't be political. I mean,
Yeah.
I personally, like, I respect musicians who are openly political. You know, I love John Lennon and REM and Bob Marley and you know some of the, but for me, and Rage Against the Machine. But like, I just wouldn't want to do that, and like, I don't feel like that's my role, is to like go up there and like stump for a politician or stump for an issue. It's like
There's like political, and music's always been like, regardless, like there's, like it's always been sort of like anti-authority, which I've resonated with. You know, like I remember I had the Rock Against Bush CDs and all that shit. And like,
yeah.
you know, it's like always sort of anti-authority. And again, I think that's something that the left and the right can kind of get behind. It's like, yeah, no one wants Nazi Germany. No one wants the Soviet Union. No one wants what leads to that.
Yeah.
So let's say fuck it all and like enjoy the experience of.
It's definitely an individual liberation kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like if you look at the rock and roll movement, it was like, you know, it was a youth movement. It was really about taking power away from the institutions and putting it back into like the room you're in.
Right.
And I think it still has that power, and just like, you know, throwing shows is so valuable, and like bringing people together on that level is so valuable. And you know, for us it's cool because we have such a great circle of friends here, and like we'll do shows like, you know, just at our friends have a little, you know, garage that's has a PA and a drum kit in it, and we
Yeah.
do shows there, like, and have parties. And
Oh, I can't wait to go to a show again.
yeah,
Next
and-
time, let you.
But like,
Sweet.
like for us, even if we're playing to 10 people or 100 people, it doesn't really matter. It's more about that
Yeah.
experience of like, let's go on this journey as a group,
Yeah.
and into this kind of subconscious realm, and then come out of it, feeling reset, feeling restored, and
Yeah.
that's what live
It's,
music can do.
Yeah, that's what the name of the band is. It's an invitation. It's like, hey, grab my hand. Like, we're gonna go do this thing for an hour or so, and like,
Yeah.
check it out.
And be vulnerable, and that's important too. I mean, how many times if you go to like bring it somewhat back to politics, just to make my analogy a little bit like stick, but like if you go to some conservative town, you see a guy playing a guitar, singing about some shit that he's been through, even though you probably don't, you might not have his same politics. It's like he's opening up, he's being vulnerable as a human being, or she, and oh, hi, kitty.
That should always be recognized.
Totally, and it's
Yeah.
like one of those places where it's like when I was playing all the time, dude. We had people with. I remember when playing shows in 2017 when Trump was still president. I remember playing for people with MAGA hats in the same right next to people with purple fucking hair, and it's just like this is what because you're recognizing as a human being that like what it is that
That's
you're
great.
trying to communicate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that we want our music to be listened to by anybody. We don't care who you voted for,
Yeah,
what color skin you have,
it's about music.
what your
It's music.
belief system is. It's like our music is really it's personal to us, and it's cathartic to us, and we think that when an artist makes something that really speaks to them, that's usually when it translates to an audience.
Yeah.
And so for us, like,
You're not the only one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
so for us, like, we haven't really had an audience for the last year and a half because of the pandemic, and it's been, we were planning on doing touring.
Yeah, we had some shows lined up, man. They
Yeah.
just pulled the carpet out from underneath.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of go insular and be like, okay, is this music still valuable to us, having been in isolation with it for a year and
Probably even more so.
not doing shows and
Yeah.
not having that,
Yeah.
like, the social dynamic of like, hey, we're cool, we're in a band, we're going to the show tonight, we're on the stage. Like, we don't have that now. So
Yeah.
that the ego trip is not there. It's just
Right.
like, all right, play your guitar and I'll play my guitar and we're in this room, and like, is this
Yeah.
worth coming back to and playing every week and every
Yeah.
week? And we found that it has been.
It fucking definitely has been.
It's something it's like I've noticed with school and with shows and with lots of things is the value of like what it means to be in the same place with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
What this physical space does to your mindset and
Mm.
to like your ability to sort of again and like intuit these things from like a very like primordial type level. You can't. I like tried to tune into like a live Instagram show once. I could just it just wasn't my thing.
It's hard.
What do you mean live?
Well, like someone
Like
says,
a
yeah, we're
concert.
going live, or
Oh,
I
yeah.
got watched a few. Actually, saw you guys did a show at Cooper's.
Yeah.
I watched part of that.
Yeah.
But then again, I was like, this sounds great, but it's just not like being
I
there.
know,
It's like watching a concert
It's
film
the,
at home.
the
Totally.
lesser version for sure.
Sometimes it can be great and transportive, especially if you're familiar with the music. But,
Yeah.
but there's something about like walking into a room full of people and hearing the sound from far away, and just like walking closer to it and realizing what's going on, and just that
Guitars
journey of
kicking.
discovery and of being in that space.
Yeah,
And
man.
yeah, there's nothing like it. So yeah, we're very eager to get back into doing that.
Yeah.
And we've already been kind of starting to do little small DIY shows with our friends, and that's been going really well.
Have you guys talked with any like promoters or people that are booking around here to kind of figure out what their timeline's like?
They dabbled a little, and
Yeah.
it seems like every time there's a little like rumor, a little spark of something, like, hey, we're gonna
Yeah.
try to do this thing, like things get kind of.
You got to kind of time it in a
tough.
way
It's
too.
tough with the
Yeah.
venues. Like,
Right.
I think with California, the rock venues are not going to be able to have in-person shows for a little while longer. I don't know.
Yeah, or at least be able to have they will have in-person shows, but they'll become social pariahs for it.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, there is, there are places like the Dewdrop where they
There's
have an
conse-
outdoor
yeah.
area already built in.
Yeah, that's right.
Or
There's
Wild Eye.
consequences now there's different sets of consequences for businesses' actions. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Businesses' actions. Yeah.
Oh, you can totally tell. If you drive through downtown Grass Valley, you can be like, okay, the people eating inside here, most likely, I probably know who they voted for.
Mhm.
The people who are out,
Yeah.
I probably know who they voted for.
Yeah.
It's like signifiers on.
Yeah, and exactly. And for us, we're in that uncomfortable position of like not wanting to alienate or be identified with
Totally.
any like movement.
Yep.
I mean,
Yeah, keep it neutral.
but at this point, like we do want to play shows, and
Yeah.
and I think if we can find ways to do that in a safe manner, and like people know what they're getting into, and they're volunteering to go to the show, like come to our show. You know, we're not trying to get 1,000 people crammed into a tiny room with no precautions. We're just trying to figure out what's next.
Yeah.
We don't know.
My dream is to have like a hangar or like a like a warehouse. up
Yeah.
I mean,
I heard rumors of a place up here that someone had a warehouse in Nevada City.
yeah, across from
You know what I'm talking
Stardust
about?
Station. Yeah. Raleen.
Oh yeah.
She's really cool.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing venue. I don't know if she'll ever do shows there again or like what's the deal. But yeah, it was right across the street from Northridge, and yeah, that was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, those.
That's weird.
I was like, what? Man, it's kind of sad. It really like I forgot how much I miss people. You know,
Mhm.
like especially now
Yeah.
that like I started this, mostly just to talk to people or like even just seeing. Like I went to Three Forks the other day
Mhm.
and just kind of like had a beer and talked with my friend. And there were like actual people around. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, this is like energizing. It like we're not meant to like be isolated in our houses without
Yeah,
no vitamin D.
That's
Yeah.
It's punishment, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think that I understand the reason for it. When it has to happen, but I think everyone should be vigilant about the sacrifices that are being asked of them. You know, and like at a certain point, like there's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
You know? Like if you're going to stay in your house for a year, like you better be damn sure that it's worth it.
Totally.
Basically, it's
Yeah.
kind of.
When the quarantine happened, I don't know what your situation was like when quarantine kind of hit the fan, like when it hit the fan last March. I was with, I don't know if you ever came to our old Pine Street house.
No, I don't think so.
It was like similar to this type of space. It was, it was like 4 of us living there, and our other friend was staying with us and then it just kind of happened that when it shut down, she was sort of forced to quarantine with us. So it was just like.
That's what happened to me too.
Yeah, every night we were like making food and watching movies, and it was a blast for like the first 2 weeks.
And then it's like, oh,
and then it's
shit,
like, oh my
yeah.
god, it's like okay.
Yeah.
People kind of develop their own habits. I was like trying to stay in shape, and
Mm-hmm.
it's
It
I
changed
started
things.
building Star Trek models.
it's
I have a
I
whole
saw
little
I
fleet.
saw those.
Those
Yeah,
are
you got the
quarantine.
Enterprise.
Yeah, I started
I
painting.
definitely regressed.
Nice.
Regress. Yeah.
No, it's cool, man.
No, it was weird, and we are moving towards a social structure where we are going to be spending more time at home, and we are going to be spending more time, doing things through distance learning or working at home and stuff like that.
Right.
So I think it's it's like the movie Ready Player One.
Oh yeah.
I actually didn't see the movie.
I didn't see it. I know the.
But
premise.
like everyone's in their own little box, little shithole.
Yeah.
And then they put on their VR headset and they're in this like amazing world, but like
Extravagant,
everyone's like living in this crappy little like a shipping container.
Yeah.
Like that. I'm afraid that is the direction we're heading in. Is like people are going to get so much. They're going to get so much like stimulation from these kind of virtual digital inputs.
Yeah.
That
But they need
the actual living part in the physical reality is going to
doesn't add up.
doesn't matter as much.
It'll be secondary.
Yeah.
I think we kind of see that already too. Like I was
Yeah.
talking to my girlfriend this morning, like about, and I think I don't want to generalize, but I kind of see it more amongst like young men in a way, where like I feel like a lot of young guys, especially in the like quarantine, will kind of gravitate more towards like online worlds
Yeah.
and even like
an escape.
porn, shit like that. I mean, it's just like getting like your basic dopamine hit kind of
Mhm.
delivered right to you.
Yeah.
And I think quarantine has made that.
Yeah.
Like I saw a statistic the other
Way
day.
more possible. And,
Yeah, it was like
yeah.
it was 28% of men between the ages of 18 and 30 haven't had sex with someone
Oh, yeah, I
over
saw
a
that.
year, and it's gone way up from
Or no, that they're virgins.
or virgins. Yeah, virgins completely. I mean, I understand if you haven't had sex in a year and you've been locked down, but like it's gone up from 8% in 2014, 2015 to 28%,
Yeah.
Damn.
and it doesn't track with women. And I just was like really curious about that. I was really interested in that,
Mhm.
and I think that like you kind of see
It's
in
the gamers.
it is. I think it is the gamers. And I also think it's. I think
Sorry,
it's too.
gamers.
Yeah, sorry gamers. Sorry gamers.
I play Magic.
You know who you are. Yeah. Well, I think part of it too. It's like the commodification of it's like no one's going out to the bar or going out and doing anything social to meet people.
Yeah.
And I think if you're kind of an awkward person, it's like it's gonna be hard to like.
It's double. It's
Yeah.
even more difficult now to
especially
to get out there.
post-COVID.
Post-COVID.
But even pre-COVID,
Yeah, it's
you
like
saw that
Tinder
trend.
and all that shit.
Yeah,
It's
people
like,
are
it's
on
not-
apps rather than just like going and actually meeting people. And I think a lot of the apps, like the dating apps, it's like so much tease. It's like you're seeing all these faces and you're like, wow, I have access to all this. And it's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
how many actual dates are you getting from this?
and for men on those
Because how are
apps,
they going? Probably
Yeah,
not
on those
well.
apps, it's the market is driven by women's choice. So
Yeah.
I mean, 5% of men get 60% of the matches.
Yeah.
That is and it makes sense. It tracks with data on mate selection and like how it is that we get together.
Yeah.
And it's like
That's how
it's
it goes.
interesting. I mean, I could see like I never really fucked with any of that stuff because I was just like I don't want to go. When I was single, I didn't want to go down like
That
really
rabbit
just
hole.
like get involved. I mean, I just feel like it'd be such a like compulsion to just sit there and like judge people or whether or not
Yeah.
I find them.
Yeah, it is.
It totally is. But I could just see that like really discouraging people from even wanting to like pursue any type of relationship. And kind of going back again, tying this back to what we were talking about earlier, I think that like it's really important that people, part of like I think this huge culture that we're dealing with right now, it's like people are so used to instant gratification and shit. They're unwilling to even go through the hard times with someone in a relationship to
like,
realize
to get
that
to a point. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
extremely important.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's true.
like
It is very important.
Yeah, everyone thinks that. Well, it's also like the saturation of pop culture, and like everyone's getting relationship ideas from
Cardi B.
movies and TV shows
Yeah.
and music, and thinking,
I
like,
hear
oh,
you.
this is how it's going to be. Then the reality is human relationships are very difficult and require a lot of communication skills, and like you're not going to develop those communication skills by sitting there on your phone or on your couch.
Yeah.
no,
You're not gonna get that from Tinder.
no, yeah, communication. I mean, that is the most important thing. Like
Yeah.
even in my own relationship, it's like a lot of it is just negotiating. It's
Right.
like, okay, you have an argument. Well,
Yeah.
here's how you could handle it and make it worse. Here's how you could not. And it's like really hard to catch yourselves kind of in those moments where shit's happening.
Yeah.
It is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot as a band too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dude,
Yeah.
being in a band is like having 4 boyfriends.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
just crossed
yeah.
2 years together as the 4 of us.
Aw,
Um,
cute.
yeah, and it's like that's week in, week out, and
Right.
it's a collaborative process where all 4 of us are contributing to the songwriting process, and it's just endless talking and endless listening, and
It's a
like
commitment of time.
And it's a commitment of time, and it's a what would you call that? Like a commitment to the other people to like fucking hear them. And like hear their point. And
yeah, that's something.
Try their.
Sean is really good at seeing that. Like if 2 people are not on the same page,
I'm just like, wait, we're not.
like
yeah.
we've gotten really into the habit of like everyone stop talking for a moment.
Yeah.
And like really try to catch up with each other and
Totally.
and understand what we're saying. And,
Yeah, that's very important.
It is.
When I was playing my main band, Tree Village, they're all my best friends. It's like Bo, Liam, and Dorian. They're all my best friends.
Right.
Bo and Dorian are brothers, and I've known their family since I was in like 3rd grade. So basically, they're my brother too.
Yeah.
So a lot of the conversations sound like sibling bickering, like dude,
Yeah,
what the
arguing and
yeah,
shit.
like,
Yeah.
fuck you. There's not like a sense of like in bands that I was touring with, I would never in my entire life come to practice and say the type of shit that I would say to them,
Yeah.
like on a regular basis, because there's like a sense of kind of like decorum and that kind of thing that you have. But
Right.
it was nice too. Like Liam,
You guys are way past that then, right?
yeah, we're way past that.
Yeah.
And eventually we stopped playing music together because it was just what we like. Time kind of got out of everyone's hand. Everyone had different goals, but it's something we'll hopefully pick up again soon. Like it was, I was gonna say it was nice having Liam being kind of like the 4th member. Well, being the 4th member, but being more of like a, again, kind of like a radical centrist, like willing to hear all perspectives and willing to kind of be the peacekeeper. And it really is important to like communicate and be able to figure out everyone's personalities within it when you're collaborating creatively with people too.
You know what's cool about what music does is it actually tests the communication, because I have to explain to him like, hey, I'm hearing this thing, I want to go da 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 da.
Yeah.
And then he's like, yeah, okay, cool, let's do it. And then we actually fucking do it. And then sometimes what happens is like we don't know what the fuck we were just talking about because we just did two different things, right?
Yeah.
So you actually get to see the result
Right.
of like, well, that communication didn't work. Like,
Right.
whatever I said didn't resonate, or whatever he said didn't resonate with me. And
Well, and you have to be able to. There's a trust there in being honest both ways too.
Yeah,
of being
yeah.
like, we have basically have a policy in the band of like, if anyone has a musical idea, let's all listen to it, develop it, and try it.
it.
Yeah.
And then if it really doesn't work, then someone will say something.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we're all pretty direct about it.
Yeah.
Like, we're not gonna do that.
I'm not feeling that.
And sometimes
way.
I get a little harsh,
Yeah.
especially because Elliot and I are like, he's a very like mathematical type of composer where
Gotcha.
he really likes like polyrhythm, syncopation.
Totally.
He's more of like a progressive rock guy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm just kind of like, just play the C.
Yeah.
Just play it in 4.
Right.
Just
Right.
stop.
Right. You guys ever play the circle game?
Mm-mm.
This was like our biggest thing that we would do in band. So it was like, okay, we've got all our parts written out, but like something still kind of feels like it's not working, right?
Yeah.
So what we would do is play the circle game. So like, let's say there's 4 people, like, we're at our band practice. You're the drummer in this situation. I'm the bass player. Steven's a guitarist, and guitarist number 4 is over here. So we'd go around the circle. So the drummer and the guitarist would play just this part we're working on, the two of them. So the two of us can hear what's going on just between the two of them.
We put our individual parts
Yes,
just together.
and then,
We do
and
that
then,
sometimes.
and then
Yeah,
we would
yeah.
just not play, me and the other guitarist, and then it would switch. So then the 2 guitars would play.
Yeah.
So we go, okay, how are the 2 guitars sounding? And then I would play, and then
smart.
almost always it was like, okay, that's the thing right there. It's like this note, or
that's what's weird, or
that's what's weird.
yeah,
this
yeah.
is the feel.
Or
Yeah.
this is why it works. This is
Yeah.
why it's beautiful. So
Totally.
it's-
Yeah. Sean and I have a weird kind of like our phrasing instincts are kind of opposite sometimes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like he'll come up with a riff and I'll try to play it back and I'll like start at the 1 instead of the 2 like every time. There's
Yeah,
always like
yeah.
some kind of weird gap. So there's a lot of like really listening to understand, where his rhythm is and where the rhythm of my phrase can
Yeah, and it's
complement it.
Yeah, it's really subtle and nuanced, but then, like he said, like to complement it, like once you get that understanding and there is a solid communication and I really do know what the hell you're talking about,
Mhm.
you really know what the hell I'm talking about,
Yeah. Then you can evaluate.
man, and then that's when the magic happens,
Yeah.
because
Right.
then we're like both on the same page, and now
Well, you're
you really
communicating-
can complement that.
and you're
because-
communicating in more than one way. And that's
Yeah,
people
yeah.
you
with
know,
the music you mean too,
Yeah,
right?
people can.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, dude, I know when I play with someone, you get to a point where I know exactly what he's gonna do at this part.
yeah.
Or what she's gonna do at this part, and it's
Can
just
feel
like
it coming, right?
totally,
Like,
it's
yeah,
super
yeah.
cool, and it's like you're creating kind of in the moment. It's like you don't know why you prefer syncopating on that beat.
Yeah,
but you
yeah,
do.
yeah. But
And
you
so it's
do.
like,
That's
Yeah.
your artistic
Don't
license.
fight the feeling.
Don't fight the feeling.
That's
Yeah.
creativity. Is you
Yeah.
have to be able to trust that gut feeling
And
that,
take it.
that intuitive feeling, and that's why a lot of musicians tend to be kind of more sensitive people once you actually
Right.
start talking to them, because
You
they're
got to actually
they're
feel
in
that.
tune with that
Yeah.
intuitive side,
Right.
especially as men.
yeah,
In a society where like that kind of talking about your feelings is not really encouraged still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even now.
You stink.
What is? How are we doing on time?
we're good. We're we got like, you guys want to shoot for like 15, 20 more minutes or
Yeah,
so? I like
sure.
to try and call it around 2 hours, just because.
Let me.
YouTube analytics shows me where people stop paying attention.
Yeah, right.
Be right back.
Yeah.
All right, we are back.
We're back. Okay.
We smoked a little bit of weed, so we'll make a lot more sense.
Well, one of the things I wanted to shift gears towards is like, we started this band about 2 years ago, and we have no manager, we have no record label, obviously. We put out an album on our own.
DIY.
We've hired our own promoter, publicist,
Mhm.
in the past, and one of the things that we really try to look at is what does it take to be a musician in 2021? What does it take to reach a new audience? And what we're finding is it's incredibly difficult to cut through the noise
Ooh, yep.
of well, first of all, you look at how media use has shifted so radically just in the last 10 years, let
Mhm.
alone the last 50, since the golden age of album sales, which I guess would be like 70s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
Back then you would buy an album, it would cost, probably more than an hour's work. It was an investment when
Right.
you bought an album, and you take it home, and your house had books in it, and it had, you know, a TV with a couple
had your
stations
music.
and your music and your record
Right.
player, and you'd put on a record, and it would be your whole experience while you're listening, and you'd sit there with the album and look
Yeah.
through the booklet, and
Get the art, and it's big, and it's in your face.
Yeah.
And it's like there's this.
Yeah.
and
It's
Yeah.
tangible too.
And
totally,
Like,
yeah.
you're
And
holding
in
it.
our generation, it had shifted towards CDs, but it was still like you'd buy a CD, or at least for me, I would buy a CD and I'd listen to the shit out of that. And
Yeah,
I'd
me
listen
too.
to it from front to back over and over again. And even if I didn't really like it, I'd still listen to it because it's like,
Right.
well, I paid for this, and then
Yeah.
you know,
Maybe you don't like all the songs on the album, but
Yeah.
you listen to it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's shifted totally from, like, the way I look at it a lot is like, you had the MP3, the digital revolution sort of happening in like the early 2000s, and that was everything that's wrong in the music industry right now is on the fucking record labels. It's on the industry's hands because they should have anticipated that technology,
Mhm.
and how they reacted was they sued that technology,
Yeah.
and then it became the
Napster.
norm.
right.
And then, and then they lost all their leverage to actually be able to protect the artists in this.
Well, they basically sold out the artists.
Yeah, they sold out the
Yeah,
artists.
I mean, they leveraged their catalogs, and they basically did it in such a way that the artists had no say in the deals they were making with these streaming services. And we as artists, I mean, we've been on Spotify.
Yeah.
Our album came out in December, but we've been on Spotify for almost 2 years because our first single was like October of 2019.
Yeah.
We've gotten a fair number of streams, but we haven't been paid a cent from any of that.
No. Well, and have you guys been really diving into the like pitching to certain playlists and that kind of thing? Or-
Yeah, and it's a lot of payola.
Yeah.
It's a lot of you pay to play. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like robot views or robot listens,
Bots
I should
listens.
say. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of services that you can hire that'll get you like, we'll get you 10,000 plays on your
Yeah.
song on Spotify, but they're from like Armenia or
Singapore,
something, or
yeah, or
some
yeah,
random
yeah,
country.
yeah.
I want the goddamn Armenians listening.
Yeah,
well, no,
we're really big
I
in
love
Armenia.
We
I love
actually,
Armenians
I think
too.
we'd be great in Armenia.
Yeah, I think so.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I've
But
got.
we want real humans listening, not like
Right.
software running in some
Well, you can
country.
always tell when a band has bought their way when you look at their. So there's a few. I won't say any local band names, but there's a few who
Ooh.
will buy, or maybe I should say, formerly local bands who decided to move to LA. Who you go on their Instagrams and they're 15,000 followers.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Well, how many people engage with your posts? 50 likes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like you're creating the facade of
Popularity.
success
Right.
to try
Yeah.
and buy into. I mean, it's essentially like the way I look at it. It's like you're kind of selling out your ideal in some way.
Well, and you have to look at
Yeah.
the nature of the art being made in that case too,
Yeah.
because something we touched on earlier is like so much music nowadays is not doing the work that it used to do of really soul searching and really wrestling with big questions and really getting more poetic or philosophical. A lot of music nowadays, especially that's like popular now, is like much more surface level.
Superficial. Yeah.
Superficial, it's more about the production or about the vibe or about like, the
Just the
sensational lyrics and
Yeah,
you know,
the hook. It's like
Yeah.
whatever makes a good TikTok dance.
Yeah.
yeah.
You
So
know?
it's hard for so many reasons to do what we do.
Yeah.
And I think that for us, we feel like there is an audience out there of people who actually do want to put on headphones and listen to an album and
I'm
close their
wondering,
eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are people who do that, but
Deep listening.
it's become more of a niche
Oh
market.
yeah, well the term, like I just said, deep listening has become the new term where
Mhm.
that used to just mean listening.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, like you didn't.
Yeah.
I grew up like.
It's different now.
How I spent when I was 17 and 18, like I spent my nights with my friends. We had like an empty room in our shitty house where we lived, like the first place I moved into, and we would just have these amazing speakers and we would just get ripped
Yeah.
and like
Yep.
drink some, bring in like pass
Yeah.
around a bottle of Jack
Oh,
Daniels
yeah.
and we just
Where'd
lay on
you
the
from
floor
those?
and we
Yeah.
would just listen to like the parts, try and like digest all the
Mhm.
different parts of the music.
We did that for the new Tool album.
Oh,
that
yeah,
came
dude.
out.
Oh,
Mhm.
totally.
We
That's-
were all
we
just
have done
laying
some
on this
listening
floor right
parties.
here.
Yeah, yeah.
We've got some hardware over here.
Yeah, we got to bring back listening parties.
Yeah. Let's
But
do
yeah,
this.
it was important, and I don't feel like, I think a lot of the music business is sort of shifted towards like a single driven,
Mhm.
like I don't see very many artists putting out like coherent. I guess I don't see very many like popular artists putting
Yeah.
out like coherent,
immersive.
Well thought out.
Yeah, it's like it should be like kind of considered to me and like
maybe
a
electronic,
novel,
maybe
some electronic,
some electronic,
and some rock. But again, it's like
yeah.
like I guess what kind of local or what kind of like newer bands or artists do you guys think are doing a good job at sort of navigating
Dreaming Ghosts?
Yeah, in the rock world, like Dreaming Ghosts out of Santa Cruz is a band that our very first show was with them, and we lucked out so well to be paired with them at that show.
Yeah.
They put out an album since then that's incredible.
Yeah, they're badass.
Dreaming Ghosts.
Dreaming
Yeah.
Ghosts.
Yeah.
Cool. Check
And
them out.
there's some other rock bands that we've discovered in the last year or two, like Foxjaw,
Foxjaw.
Stake. They're like
Tight.
you would never. I hadn't heard of a lot of these bands. So what I've found is like we as media creators and consumers, we have to kind of find our little strata.
We're both. Yeah.
And if you're somebody who wants to listen to that kind of music, like you have to challenge yourself to dig a little deeper into who's actually doing that now and who can I
it's
support.
harder than ever to find those kinds of bands.
There's not
nowadays,
a lot. And for me as a rock listener, like you're not just competing with the other bands that exist right now. You're competing with the entire back catalog of music, which is all available at your fingertips.
Right.
You know, and so that's another way that things have changed. Is
Even competing with the algorithm too.
That's another.
I know when I'm looking for my music on Spotify, I basically have to type in pretty much my entire artist name to even get the hit. And before that, it's like
because it's lesser known.
Lesser known. And I think that there's like maybe some like SEO. I don't know if it relates necessarily to Spotify, but like some kind of search engine optimization type.
Yeah, so Spotify actually trolls the web.
We went deep on the Spotify algorithm.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Spotify, we're coming for you.
Well, no, I use Spotify. I like it.
I like Spotify too.
But you have to like understand how it works
what
as a creator, and part of what we discovered is so what it does is basically like it puts every song and every artist into like an X and Y grid in terms of like I don't know how they define the values that they're using.
You have like a plot on the graph of Spotify.
It's like a virtual 3D space. Where Led Zeppelin is over here, and so Pink Floyd is going to be kind of somewhere near Led Zeppelin in terms of,
and like Led Zeppelin's going to be bigger, right? And then maybe like I don't know, whatever else.
Yeah, you got to find that visualization.
And then like where is the Beatles in there? There may be a couple clicks this way, and it's based on the sonic qualities of the music as well as the listener. So if like 85% of people who listen to Tool, for example, also listen to A Perfect Circle or Deftones or whatever, that's going to be grouped together.
Artists you may like.
They're tightly close together in the algorithm's eyes.
Right.
So you're more likely to get recommended Deftones or Perfect Circle if you're like all about Tool.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I've noticed that.
And then like you said too, the sonic quality, like they actually scan your song and it becomes I don't know.
They look for patterns.
Your song is like a wave.
They can analyze. They analyze the waveform just with AI.
Yeah.
So
it's like distorted guitar.
They tell if it's jazz or rock or blues based on the sonic qualities of it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so you're also categorized that way. In the eyes of Spotify.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But another interesting thing is the popularity too.
Yeah.
So like people who listen to Lady Gaga. So every artist in Spotify on the back end is given a number from 0 to 100 based on how popular they are, and it's an algorithm.
God, I'd be terrified to see my number.
We're a 1.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm
or maybe a 2.
1.
Yeah, it's and each like to get from a 1 to a 10 is 10 times easier than to get from a 10 to a 20.
Exponential.
So it's exponential. So like if most people who listen to Britney Spears or NSYNC or Aerosmith or any of these like giant Michael Jackson, any of the huge artists generally also only listen to really popular things.
Yeah, I think again sort of like what we were talking about earlier with Tinder, but with music, like the top 5% of artists like that is 80% of the streams on Spotify.
Maybe more.
Yeah, maybe more. Yeah. I think one of the ways that Spotify could make a huge impact for local or for small artists is have a donate button.
That's true.
The fact that they haven't done that to
me. A PayPal link or...
Yeah, because they started that, I believe, last year when all this shit happened. They're like, artists are having a really hard time, so we have a donate button. And then they took it away.
Yeah.
I'm like, why don't you just give fans the option?
It should just be on there with the song.
Well, and that's donate. The thing. If I was listening, like, okay, like I'm listening to you guys on Spotify or whatever.
There's just a button that
I just got paid. I'm like, yeah, tight. Make it a 2-click thing. Make it really easy. And then you guys get it straight into Spotify. This is what I don't understand too. Obviously, what Spotify could do in this situation is just take 0.5% of the profits of whatever you donate.
Mhm.
So you put in $5 and they do what PayPal does,
Yeah.
and you
Or Bandcamp with
yeah,
merch.
and you get
Yeah.
paid $4.80.
Mhm.
You know, it's not
Yeah.
perfect, but it would be
Yeah, because they are facilitating still. You
Yeah.
know, they do earn, they do, like, I don't want Spotify to not make money. I just think, what we've arrived at a place where, like, if you want to discover new underground music, you need to seek it out, basically. So what we need to do as a collective is realize that we as supporters of the arts need to do more to actually engage with the people around us or out there who are on that level. Like if you're not listening to underground music, Spotify will not recommend underground music to you because it understands you as somebody who only listens to popular things that are already established.
Yeah.
So for us, like,
it's an uphill battle because we're not going to get recommended to someone who's all about Deftones or Alice in Chains.
Right.
It's like
Even
if you guys have a very similar influence,
it's never going to happen.
We feel like people who like Deftones or Alice in Chains or Tool would probably
like
find a lot to like about us.
Right.
But they're not going to get recommended because we're a 1 in popularity, and those bands are a 40 or a 50 or a 60 or whatever.
Yeah.
So the algorithm accounts for that. So
and there's sort of like a valuing that people who may not necessarily be like they're kind of outside the music world a little bit. They're like, oh well, you don't have, you're not popular, so therefore like you're probably not good. Probably a lot of people feel like that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because the best bands every band is undiscovered at some point.
Right.
And nowadays too, with so many people creating music, like I'll go on these little binges where unfortunately I have my ruts that I fall into with Spotify because it's like there's too much. It's like again option paralysis. But when I start digging around a little bit,
that's some cool shit sometimes.
Oh, dude, you find and sometimes I'll say, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. Like I'm at the gym for an hour. I'm going to get into this band, which I know doesn't have that many people that listen to it, and then I'm just gonna kind of just jump all over the place and just kind of find
from
whatever bands they're into. And again, it's like I have noticed that like if a band has like 10,000 followers or something, other bands they'll recommend are in that sort of range.
Yeah, that's the same. Yeah.
It's not going to recommend a big band, but it's not going to, if you're a big band, it's not going to recommend a small band.
Right.
So you can find a lot of cool stuff from there, but it takes
you have to be more of an active
conscious
engager.
Effort.
So I guess that's my call to action for anyone listening to this. If you're a supporter of the arts or of underground music, is take on that role. Hey,
you little stinker.
Take on that role more of being the person who's willing to do a little bit more groundwork, find those bands, buy their merch, support them, go to their shows.
Yeah.
Don't expect, I think a lot of people expect, they're used to like the record labels and radio is going to deliver great music to you because that's how it was when you were a kid or when we were, in the 90s. There were so many creative bands that were on major labels, and now you're not going to find great music coming from those channels. You're just not. You're not going to turn on FM radio and hear like the rock band that's going to light the world on fire. It's not on FM radio. It's in the clubs and it's in the DIY shows.
Right. Yeah, and radio is really like.
Yeah.
What is the role of radio now? I mean, radio was one of the primary distributors.
Obsolete.
It's obsolete. No one listens to radio.
It's like a thing that they they forget that they even put it in your car, but it's like just in your car,
right?
Because they forgot to not put it in.
Yeah, exactly. And that used to be one of the ways, like even as a local musician myself, it's like, oh God, you have a song on KVMR. That's something that's cool.
Well, I do love like local radio.
I love local
stations,
radio too. I'm not sure how many people still listen to it.
Yeah, it's not that relevant.
No.
So
before we get off the music subject.
Yeah.
So there's something like Spotify called Audius, and it's linked with cryptocurrency.
Oh shit!
And it's something like the complete opposite of Spotify as far as like acknowledging the artists and letting them have their pay, like getting paid for their services.
Yeah.
And
through
so they
crypto?
have through crypto. So they have their own currency, and it's called Audio.
Huh.
And actually, that's just been blowing up in the last like 3 weeks. It like fucking went through the roof.
Damn, man, I gotta check that out. So I've been getting into cryptocurrency a little bit.
Me too, man.
Yeah.
I just took a deep dive the last couple months, and it's been fucking mind blowing.
Yeah,
what's going on
as soon
right
as
now?
the Wall Street bet stuff happened,
yeah.
I was like, oh, I think I gotta learn a little bit more about this.
Dude, there's some crazy shit happening right now. That's for damn sure.
I have a friend that's really into it. Like he got into it years ago, and we were
local.
Yeah, local guy.
Oh man, I'd like to talk to him.
Yeah, I'll set you up with his name.
Oh man, that's awesome.
But yeah, Luke was like, we were all at GV Brew the other night when I saw you,
Yeah.
and we were drinking a little bit, and I was like, hey man, so how much crypto do you have? He's like, enough to give everyone here like $100. I
Wow.
was like, okay. So I just sent everyone at the table $100.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
cool.
you know, it's like
Wait, in crypto?
in crypto.
And they just like send it out?
Over Coinbase. Or
Oh
whatever.
yeah, dude, that's so cool.
I mean, it does have some really exciting opportunities for musicians because of the way, you know, blockchain can be assigned to a digital file,
Right.
and people can basically become like shareholders of the master recording.
So that's the idea of it, is that the artist has control of their profile and they can upload tracks as they please,
Mm-hmm.
and people can either donate or I haven't quite worked out exactly how it all works yet.
Doesn't the traffic generate
I'm not sure.
crypto?
I'm not sure exactly, but I know there's some kind of
Every blockchain technology is a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, the more it's like you barely start to scratch the surface and it's already
Right.
changed by the time you're kind of underneath
and then
it.
there's 4 or 5 other companies coming right behind it who are doing it.
I mean, you and Sean could have a whole other episode just on crypto.
I would
Because
love to.
this guy's really going. That's probably too much for what
Let's
right
do
now.
let's do this. Okay, let's set up something.
Get
I'll bring in Luke.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
actually
dude. Because I'm a curious motherfucker. I got lots of questions.
Like-
I got lots of fun questions. And if he knows a thing or two,
Plus, Luke's hilarious. Yeah.
Well,
oh, dude, let's do it. I'm down.
Well, I'll just say to kind of bring
Yeah.
it full circle to everything we've been talking about, music and everything, like for us as a band, like to be able to own our master recordings and to be able to put them on Spotify ourselves and to be able to like share that with people,
Yeah.
we're excited about that. And like, you know, I like that we don't have a record label and that we've done everything, you know, DIY basically. You know, our album,
Yeah.
it took over a year to finish
Yeah.
our album, and it's over an hour long, so it's like it's a pretty
Piece of art,
it's a
man.
pretty
It
meaty.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's you know full production. I mean, we really went all out on it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it's an exciting time for artists, but it's just a difficult time for artists as well. And like, you know, financially, we haven't really figured out the new model yet. But I think it does
Yeah.
involve like DIY tours, DIY
Mhm.
festivals. Like the live experience has to be number one because that's something where you always have a leg up over Led Zeppelin.
Right.
In our case, because Led Zeppelin can't do shows or they're not doing shows.
Yeah.
You know, we have that at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it can work out, man. I've seen it work. I mean, I've been around bands who've figured it out
Mhm.
and how to make it work with their jobs, how to make it work with their
Yeah.
friends and their family and their
Everything.
significant others.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it can definitely happen, and like it will happen if you're willing to put those years and that time
It
in,
is a year.
and
Years.
be able to
Yeah.
communicate and not have, you know, it's like a lot of where bands get lost is like they get to a point where they're about to get somewhere and then someone does something stupid
Yeah.
or someone
Yeah.
quits,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
you got to bring in someone else, train
Yeah.
them up. So
Yeah.
just stick together and like,
Yeah. Well, it helps to enjoy each other's company and enjoy
Yeah, be
the
friends.
music you're making, be
Yeah.
friends, and just
Totally.
like we're having practice, you know, in an hour and
yeah,
working on new material.
That's also the benefit of living. I mean, it's not easy to have roommates. You know, it's
Right.
not easy to live with someone. There's lots of things lots of communication that needs to take place, and so
Totally.
that's been a little foundation for us, as well as for the band, or maybe it's vice versa. I don't know,
Mhm.
but it's helped to like figure out how to be around each other for
Yeah.
extended periods of time and figure shit out and be patient and be honest and open and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, full circle. Like I think that informs kind of how my political orientation has shifted. Is
Yeah.
like more towards conversation and towards listening and more towards
yeah.
you know in-person communication as
Yeah.
opposed to trying to be like the online avatar of some unwieldy philosophy.
I hear you.
Sometimes you
Gone.
gotta take the time to figure it out too. It takes a second and like to really buckle down and you know, I guess in terms of writing music, you have to buckle down sometimes and like figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And it takes time.
I think it takes
Patience.
time.
Yeah.
Good things do.
Well, guys,
Oh
thank
yeah.
you for coming on. That was
Yeah.
a fun conversation.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, man, it was
Hope you all
fun.
Keep
enjoy
doing
it.
what you do, man.
Thank you, dude. Tight.
Crypto next time, dude.
Crypto next
I'm
time.
fucking
Yeah,
down.
I'll
This
hit
was
up
great.
Luke today. I'll put him in touch with you.
Yeah, dude.
His name's Luke Pryor.